Interesting. Okay. Well, before we go into future state, what I'd love to do is just have you do a bit of a walkthrough of how you're using Synchrony for the audience.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, if you don't mind just pulling up your instance and giving us, a high level lay of the land, like what are you connecting, and then going into potentially one of these processes to help people understand your light bulb moment, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, I can start from a very high level. All right. So here is our synapses. So as you know, Synchrony got to start somewhere, and that is the library of information that you currently have at your fingertips, whether that's Marketo, Salesforce. And as you can see, um, the part of our business problem is we have two Salesforce instances in some cases, but we also have Marketo. So we're listening to a couple different areas of where there's activity going on. And it looks simple, but it also is extremely powerful to where you can isolate certain fields through there. So back to that light bulb moment, Aaron, and it was like, hey, this looks pretty easy. And then I dug into it and I didn't realize how powerful it could be until you actually go into the Schema Studio, which is everything when it's being updated, how it's being activated. Um, and it was slightly overwhelming, to be honest. But then I realized it's not about what you're looking at and you're searching for something. You actually should be listening to what's happening and going back to that opportunity. If you don't mind, I'll show you what I meant by the opportunity change.
Yeah, and
So
just for the audience, like what are we looking at here? You're now in Sync Studio. You were in Schema Studio. What is Sync Studio for? What
yeah,
is this view for you?
so Sync Studio is how I look at it is objects within each of those synapses. So building out every field level area. So like you can see here, there's opportunity, account, lead, asset line item, Marketo lead. All of those are different objects in all of those systems put together in one kind of landscape to where we can start connecting things.
Okay.
So every one of these are connected and then pushed into Synchrony as one.
This is what we internally call, the unified data model. What you're actually
Yeah.
doing is you're representing all of the data across all connected systems in one single place, and you're bringing all that data together so that you get a single view of your business across systems. Yeah.
And more importantly, building the relationships between them, which
Yes.
is really difficult to do. And Synchrony allows us to build these relationships. And you can see there's relationships between the opportunity in Salesforce and a Marketo lead. And so that light bulb moment, Aaron, is what happens when an opportunity close one? And then how do I start to talk to those folks that have gone close one immediately without going completely over to sales operations, saying, hey, are we ready to talk to them, et cetera, et cetera. It's just automated. And how we automate that is by field level. So what I've done here is I went into Sync Studio inside of that opportunity object. And then we're looking at the opportunity, what they call the opportunity pipeline. And this opportunity pipeline says, well, we're moving information from Salesforce into the opportunity object inside of Synchrony, and then back over into the opportunity into Salesforce. So it's really just creating a pipeline going from one. And inside of this, it's just listening to changes. And some of these changes is what we actually need to access to actually trigger back to Marketo. So one things I was talking about is primary business user email. So if you go into what they call a field level pipeline, which is the primary business user email, which is inside of the opportunity object, we only want to understand what happens to those close one only. So that is what is happening here. So we're looking up primary business contact, which is that field inside of Salesforce. And then as it tries to move inside of Synchrony here, we have a couple different kind of proxies, if you will. Like we only want to pull in people that have closed one. And if they have closed one, then inside of this contact, we're looking up that contact IDs record. So once we have that record, we can actually build that relationship between Marketo with that contact ID, because it actually does print the person ID in Marketo anyway. We know that. So once that happens, we say, okay, if that Marketo lead and has a relationship that's true, if they're equal, we want to print that email address inside of a field inside of Marketo to start building smart campaigns, et cetera, and putting them inside of an engagement email programs to get those emails out. So that's how Syncre helped us just with that one small piece. But the power is you don't have to limit that. You can say, I want all of this information to be normalized. For example, if you say on closed won opportunities only, or maybe on all opportunities at a certain stage, I need to contact these other people. Maybe it's an ABM type of play. There's tons of different things you can do inside of opportunity. And I know I'm just speaking to marketing operations types of processes here, but there could be other ways to where you could have different areas of the business that need that information at that particular time. So again, like our light bulb moment at Conga is what happens when that happened, or what happens when this happened, and what is the ultimate way we should run when a certain instance occurs for a customer, and we can build it inside of Syncre. What we're starting to really love, and people in my web team that are pretty experienced with Python are now building and working with engineering, and it's opening up gates to saying, hey, they're getting to know each other, they're working closer together, building custom Python synapse pieces directly into our products.
Interesting.
With telemetry data, meaning, hey, this person's trying to do this, or they're trying to log in they've had 32 logins versus 18 logins somewhere else, and how much insight does that give into that customer for the CSM?
Wow.
And then how do we pull that information back over to the CSM? And then what kind of listening events are we trying to say, what happens when a customer does this inside of our platform? Who should know about it?
Yeah.
And maybe what kind of information do they need? Do they need something from marketing that says, hey, we understand that you're trying to do X, Y, and Z. Here is a blog series that explains these things. Really that is borderline on the creep factor, but you can kind of reel it back and say, hey, let's just have the CSM reach out, maybe possibly put them inside of an outreach sequence, because our CSMs do use that at Conga.
Yep.
And they can start outreach with that. That pushes up NPS, that increases cross-sell.
Yeah.
So ultimately business impact, it's high.